Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be taking you through episode 2 of my new playlist Heart to Heart, and this video is going to be about bullying. So before I start this video, I just wanted to address the response to my last video on narcissism, and it was taken really well, and I'm so thankful I sort of made that video and it helped so many of you out there. I've had an amazing time interacting with so many of you all over Instagram, and it's great to know your stories and the strength that each of you have to put up with people who treat you unfairly and still come out just as kind, just as wonderful as you really are. So today's topic is going to be about bullying. Now, this is something that all of us associate with childhood, right? We think of it as a childhood problem. And that is true to a certain extent because that's where I think all of this starts. But something that people don't talk about very often is adult bullying. Once you grow up, you're still going to find bullies in your life. And I feel like this term bullying it's very vague, like you can't really put a definition to it, but if you have experienced it, you know exactly what it is. Alright, so I really hope that you guys will take something back from this video. If you do enjoy it, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell notifications button so you never miss a video from me again. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into this video. Alright, so I want to start this video quickly by telling you a little bit about how bullies are. And if I were to bring it down to like 3 particular characteristics or traits that you will see in bullies, is that they are dominating, they are defensive, and they are deceptive. So let me break this down further. So by dominating, I think this is very self-explanatory, where they want to be the alpha in whatever group they are in. So they want to be like number one, they want to be the one who like controls things, who like dominates over you, right? Second would be that they are defensive, which means that they're never wrong, and they also sort of avoid responsibility. And the third one is deception. So they're very deceptive in the sense that they are very good at like putting the blame on someone else who is like a scapegoat. So whoever's an easy target, it's very easy for them to push the blame onto somebody else. So I think in my life, like growing up, I don't even remember this incident. It's something that my parents told me about a couple of years ago. Is when I was really young. That this is probably like around kindergarten or something. So I was maybe 3-4 years old. And my dad took me to a playground and I was sort of playing. I made a few friends and something happened and there was a fight, or I can't even imagine what a fight looks like amongst 2 toddlers, but there was some sort of a disagreement there, and my friend apparently slapped me across the face, and I stood there staring at her. And this is one thing that my dad keeps telling me. He's like, "What was wrong with you? Like, why didn't you fight back?" And I don't know why. Okay, but it's just that was my very first experience with bullying. And I feel like in school, a lot of us are told to ignore bullies, and hey, if someone gives you a hard time, just sort of ignore them and they leave you alone. Or also in a lot of schools, another problem is when for example a bully punches you in the face and you punch them back, you get in trouble, right? And that's something that shouldn't be there. I mean, you should be able to stand up to bullies. So the thing is, when somebody's been bullied in their childhood and they just sort of keep letting things go, like keep ignoring it, thinking that hey, one day this guy will leave me alone, it's very rare that happens. Like usually if you don't speak back, it just means that you're an easy target and they're just going to keep bullying you. Coming to adult bullying, I think this is something that happens in pretty much any environment. Okay, it could be work, it could be a marriage, it could be a relationship, it could even be in your own family. So an example of an adult bully at work would be if for example your senior comes to you and says, hey, I want you to do things a certain way, and then you go like, hey, but I have this other way of doing things, maybe this will be more efficient, will be more effective. And then they go like, if you want to keep your job, then you better shut up and listen to me. Okay, that is bullying. In a relationship, if you feel like you have to constantly listen to your partner because there are consequences if you don't, that is bullying. You're being bullied right there. and even in your own family. Unfortunately, there are people with parents who are bullies, and they constantly, be reminding their child how worthless they are, or how they can't achieve some things in life. Sometimes we have teachers who say to us, तुम्हारा कुछ नहीं होगा life में, you're not going to get anywhere in your life. These things aren't okay, and I know that a lot of us live in fear of, hey, but if I speak up, what will happen? So that's what I want to address today. Okay, so when it comes to adult bullying, there is a lot of oppression faced in the world, okay, but it's not very openly spoken about. And now this probably, you probably think of these situations where maybe you've been to an institution or a workplace where there are anti-bullying policies in place. So my college, for example, had this strict anti-bullying law, right? But they don't always work, right? And I'll tell you why. And that's because sometimes the creators of these policies are people who are in power, people who have probably not ever experienced bullying, have never been oppressed by somebody else. So it's very hard for them to sort of understand the psychological impact that it has on somebody who's going through it. Because if you're being bullied, it's not that easy to step up and just report it, because you're like, oh, but if I speak up, this guy's going to make life really hard for me. So I think something that anyone who's being bullied faces is the feeling of helplessness, the feeling of fear, okay? And like, let's take a scenario, okay? Okay, you just got a new job, you got an internship somewhere, and you are super excited about, your first day at the job, and you're introduced to the team, and instantly you sort of get this vibe, right? You're like, oh, these people are nice to me, and then there's that one person who's purposely sort of piling you on with work, or let's say your work hours are like 9 to 5, and then at 5 o'clock he comes to you and goes like, hey, listen, like, I need help with this document, this needs to be done right away. Why don't you just stay back an extra couple of hours, finish this off and send it to me? And you're like, oh shit, like, this is my senior, and if I can't speak up to him, I can't risk losing my job. But that is a form of bullying, right? Like, and he walks home happily and leaves you there to sort of finish off your work. Or if somebody from work calls you up and starts screaming at you for something that didn't go their way, that isn't okay either. And I also want to address this point that when you've been bullied for so long, I understand that you have almost this feeling of anxiety, and you're even ashamed of the fact that you can't stand up for yourself as much as you'd want to. You just aren't able to do it, right? Now, I feel like the reason this happens is because you have spent so much time in your life avoiding conflict, running away from conflict. And I know, like, so many of us are not good with confrontations. I myself wasn't. I really wasn't. But it took me a very long time to get okay with it. And today, like, at this point, I can confront people. Like, I won't say I'm 100% there yet, but I've reached much further than where I was. So the thing is, when you're being bullied, you spend so much time just running away from the conflict. And that's also sometimes because, our parents tell us, oh, this kid hit you, you did the right thing by not hitting him back, or you did the right thing by not speaking up against your teacher. It's okay, just ignore. When you keep ignoring things, you literally don't know how to tackle conflict, okay? So you have been averse to these situations for so long that the biggest bully becomes the fear itself. And that fear makes it almost suffocating for you to survive around these people. Like, if you know somebody is bullying you and imagine you can't walk away, that's not a good place to be in. Right? So I think the thing with adult bullying is that it's a little bit more complicated than the ones that we face in our childhoods, because sometimes as an adult, when you are, okay, I'm going to take the example of a workplace again, all right? You're at work and somebody's not treating you right, and this somebody is from, say, your team, or someone that you will be closely working with in the future as well. So the fact that they're treating you badly, it's sort of affecting you, but you don't want to speak up because you don't know how to confront them. And second, you don't want to report it because you're afraid of being seen as a tattletale. And this brings me to another point where sometimes when we are so upset with other people, we tend to vent it out to a group of friends, or for example, with another few employees. And the thing about that is it can make you feel better in the moment, but the truth is people talk, there's going to be gossip, and if in that manner it sort of reaches the oppressor, it's going to have worse outcomes for you. And also at the same time, even if it doesn't reach that person, it's not going to change anything. They're still going to treat you awfully. Now, the best thing about bullying is that it is fixable. It can be fixed. Now, the bad news is only you can fix it. There is literally nobody else who can step up for you and teach people how to treat you. Only you can do that. So basically, it starts with a decision to take control. Okay, it starts with you telling yourself that, hey, you know what, I don't deserve to be treated this way. What this person's doing to me is wrong. First of all, acknowledging that and being aware of the fact that you're in a situation that nobody should be in. You decide that from this moment on, I am not going to tolerate it anymore. You need to take action to become your own safe space. Imagine constantly living in fear, constantly living in this situation where you're like, you never know what this person's going to do or this person's going to say to you. Only you can change that. So bullying can be attributed to superiority, arrogance, prejudice, ignorance, and most importantly, a lot of insecurity and immaturity. Again, no matter how tough these people look on the outside, they aren't. And I know this can be very hard to believe because I've met a fair amount of bullies in my life, and I was terrified of them. Okay, but the things that may go through your head when you are a victim of bullying is, hey, I don't want to make a big deal out of this. Or second could be, no one will believe me. And this is very prevalent in a group of friends. When this happens amongst like your close circle, that's when you're in a bit of a tricky situation, right? Because you're like, this person has such a good reputation and no one's going to believe me. And this has happened with me. Okay, this really has. Where I spoke up once about something that happened to me, something that was very, very wrong. And people just went like, no, I mean, I don't believe you because that person could never do something like that to you. So in that situation, I was in a toxic environment. I was surrounded by people who I thought were my friends, but they really weren't. Because in every group, I feel like there's always one person at least who becomes like a scapegoat, the one person who everyone makes fun of because they're just an easy target, right? And I've been that person and I know what it feels like. And also at the same time, you have this thought, you're like, I want to get along with everyone. I don't want to create any problems here. So you're willing to let this pass, right? Sometimes, someone comes up to you and says something that isn't very nice, and then they just laugh it off, and then you're like, it's okay, like this wasn't that serious, and you let it pass. But usually that's the way for a bully to sort of test the waters and see whether you are somebody who would speak up for yourself, if you're someone who would defend yourself immediately. And when they realize that you aren't that kind of a person, then you become their target. Okay, so now you've identified that you are a victim of bullying and you want things to change, right? And I know this isn't easy for everyone, and it takes a lot of work, all right? But there is something known as assertiveness training, all right? And if you are someone who's a victim of bullying, I highly recommend that you read up about it and really understand how you can be more assertive. So for those of you who don't know, assertiveness is basically a social skill that relies heavily on effective communication. So people who are assertive are very good at communicating, so like what they need, what they like, what they dislike, and also what their boundaries are. So these people find it super simple to tell you that, hey, this is okay, this is not okay. And they're not worried about, hey, am I being rude to this person? Because you can sort of put your point forward without being rude. So assertiveness is not being rude. It's not, being a bully to the person who's bullied you. It's not about that. It's about effectively communicating your needs in the most polite way possible. I'll give you an example of how to be assertive while you're being bullied. Say you're at your workplace and you've delivered a document that you've worked on for 18-20 hours, say the whole week, okay, and your boss or a co-employer, senior maybe, comes to you and says, you know what, this is such terrible work, and you don't even deserve to be working here. Like, it's such a worthless piece of a document, and I don't know why you even tried. Now, in this situation, there are a few ways you can react, right? If you are so used to this kind of treatment, you're just instantly going to be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. But maybe this has happened quite a few times, and it's the anger has built up inside you because you were never able to sort of speak up the last few times that it happens, and it all comes out in the wrong ways, and you sort of lash out at them and don't say appropriate things. And obviously that can have really bad outcomes, where as a bully, they have more experience with sort of dominating over you, so they're going to beat you with it. In fact, they're going to take this situation, turn it around, put it on you, maybe tell your boss about it, and then you lose your job even when you weren't wrong. You just stood up for yourself. So an assertive way of answering that kind of a statement would be something like, you know what disappoints me, that we'll never be able to sit down and talk about how I can improve in this area. Or it really upsets me that you can't just sit down with me and tell me how I can do better, tell me where I went wrong. Something like this. There are always nicer ways to do things, and I feel like people who are victims of bullies are generally just so nice, and you're almost like a people pleaser, and you don't want to upset the person in front of you even if they're being rude to you. I get that. So that's why there is something called assertiveness training, where you sort of learn how to deal with these tricky situations and speak up for yourself in the most polite way possible. So now, when somebody asks you to do something that you don't want to, there are a few ways to look at it. One is you could say yes because you don't want to say no, and then end up feeling miserable that you said yes. Or you could say no and feel really, really bad that you said no. And third would be you say no and you don't care. So you want to reach this point, right? Because if you don't want to do something, you don't want to do it. Now, I'll give you another example. Let's say an acquaintance of yours, someone who you have known from, say, school or something, a long time ago. Okay, y'all were maybe in the same school, but y'all aren't technically friends, or you don't talk that much. And this person visits you in your city and asks to stay with you. Okay, something like that. Say you have your own place, but you know that they have the means to maybe stay somewhere else, or you're just not comfortable with that, right? So now, if you go with a method number one, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, you can stay with me, but you're going to feel super uncomfortable throughout that stay, so it isn't going to be conducive for that person or you anyway. Number two is you would say no and just feel so guilty about it. So the best way to handle this kind of situation would be saying something like, hey, I'm so sorry, I can't help you out right now, but let me send you a couple of links, send you a couple of accommodation options, or like, I am super caught up on time and I will let you know when and if I can meet you, something like that. And that's the best approach, because you are taking power into your hands, right? When you tell them that, okay, I will let you know when I can sort of help you out, and if I can, you're taking power back into your hands. Versus if you do something like beating around the bush and making excuses, which a lot of us do, right? For example, you say something like, hey, I can't this weekend, I'm super busy, I'm going out of town. That gives them the power to say, oh, okay, if you can't make it this week, how about next week? And then there's only so many times that you can go around turning them down before you finally sort of run out of options and have to say yes. So there's always a way to be assertive and be courteous at the same time. And this takes a bit of training, a bit of thought even. Sometimes maybe when you're in that situation itself, it won't strike you. And that's why you need to consciously take that effort and sit down with yourself, take some time and think about these situations. If there is a scenario that keeps repeating in your life, if there's one person who keeps on sort of putting you in places where you're uncomfortable, you need to form out scenarios in your head and think about how you can tackle them. Alright, so now that you know what bullying really is and what a wide spectrum of situations there are that actually correlate to bullying, you're probably wondering what you can do to stop it. Okay, so now simplifying whatever I've said into 3 main bullet points. Number 1 would be you need to affirm your strength. You need to take back power. Okay, You need to talk to yourself and tell yourself that bullies aren't being mean to you or being hurtful to you because of something that you did wrong. This is something that we do very often, right? Like, they're picking on me because I am like this. They pick on me because, I don't wear nice clothes. They're picking on me because, I am so overweight or something like that. It's not your fault. They are choosing to be mean to you. They're choosing to be hurtful. All right, and you need to realize that. And at that point, you have to tell yourself that, what, I don't deserve this. Remind yourself that you are worthy of respect. When you realize what you're truly worthy of, you will not stand being in a group of people who aren't able to respect you, who jump at every chance to sort of put you down. So when you realize that, that's like your number one step. All right, that's already going to give you a little bit of power, and it's going to make you a bit annoyed, like, hey, you know what, I don't deserve this. This is what's going to sort of go on in your mind. Number two would be speaking up. Now, this is going to be super, super, super difficult, and your heart is probably going to pound a lot before you do it, but try it. Trust me, you will learn only by doing it. It's like any other thing, practice makes perfect. You're going to really just have to get over yourself and just take that step. So if somebody comes to you and says something about your weight, or says something like, okay, actually, let me give you an example. Back in junior college, I had this one particular girl who I thought was my friend, and she used to love making rather not so nice comments about my body, and she used to joke about the fact that I was flat. All right, and she made this whole rhyme, or I don't know if this rhyme was already going around. It wasn't very nice. It was something about you're so flat from the front and the back, and then they sort of compare you to a cupboard, and this was all rhymed. It was, in fact, for those of you who understand Marathi, let me tell you, she said that pudhun sapat, magun sapat, godrejcha kapat. And she used to find that very funny, okay? And honestly, when people say things like that to you, that's when you become super conscious, right? Like, before that, I didn't even care about my body, but suddenly somebody made me feel like I wasn't enough. The thing is, when I was being picked on, a few people who, again, I thought were my friends, found it very funny, and they were laughing about it. And in that moment, almost out of social pressure, I laughed too. But I wasn't laughing on the inside. I was really hurt. But then again, it's like, hey, these are my friends, and am I making a big deal out of this? That sort of went through my head. The next time somebody comes to you and says something that's super mean, and then just laughs about it and says, Ari, yaar, I was just kidding. That's when you have to stop them and say, kidding. When you say you're kidding, both of us should be having a good time. Both of us should be laughing. But now that you know I'm not, you'll never do this again. Saying something like this is going to be so simple and so effective, because the bully is being called out on their behavior. And you don't have to scream at them to say this. You can say this in the most calm tone possible, but in a manner that it sort of makes them realize that you're being serious. Now, this again can have its sort of repercussions, because when you call a bully out, their tactic is going to be to come back and bully you even more and try to sort of, break you. And that's where you need to be strong. At this point, you've already identified what kind of a person this woman or man is. You can't let them sort of get to you. Number three is always report it whenever it's possible, okay? And report it to somebody who can take action. Just venting it out to your friends may seem very effective in the moment, but in the long run, it really isn't, because it's just going to give rise to gossip, and it might just reach the bully through someone else, and then you're just going to get into more trouble. Instead of that, report it to an authority. Don't worry about being called a tattletale, even if this person is who you think is your friend. It's not cool. Some things are just not cool, okay? So you need to understand what the boundaries are. Understand that a bully's biggest method of intimidation is isolation. So they are going to sort of try to sideline you just so they can get their way. So at the same time, like, building a sense of community, building a few people who really truly can stand up for you can help in those situations as well. Because when you're just sort of learning how to be assertive, it can be really hard, especially when this bully comes back with, maybe even meaner things to say to you, or does even worse things to you. It's nice to have a couple of people who will stand up for you whenever required. Now, this brings me to the next part, and that is, if you have never experienced bullying, but you can see someone else being bullied, I really urge you to stand up for them. And understand that the reason that they can't stand up for themselves isn't because they are weak, is because they're scared. Okay, they've gone through oppression probably a gazillion times. Okay, and they're just used to it now. It's just their life now. They believe that, that's how they deserve to be treated, and that's why bullying impacts the victim in such terrible ways. It makes them question their own self-esteem, and that's why if you can step in and prevent that person from being bullied, that's great. Now, for example, you don't want to just step in and tell this bully that, hey, you know what, you need to back off. Let's say you don't want to do that. Another thing that you can do is, after this whole episode has happened, go to the victim, take them to the side, and just talk to them and be like, hey, listen, this is what I have observed. What do you think about it? So when you do this, it lets the victim know that they are seen, that the oppression is seen, and either they'd be comfortable enough to sort of share with you what has happened, or they'd still be too scared to speak up, and they'd be like, you know what, no, it's nothing. And in this moment, you can reassure them that, hey, if you ever need to talk to someone, I'm there for you. Even saying that, maybe they'll never come up to you, but just knowing that somebody's there for them, someone's looking out for them, can really go a long way. Okay, number 2 is uplift the target. So now, when it comes to cyberbullying, I've seen a lot of people on Instagram, okay, and this has happened with me, with my friend circles. Maybe most of us have made this mistake, okay, but it's only recently till I read about it, and while I was doing research for this video, that I truly understood what this meant and how true it was. And that is, let's say your friend has put up some picture on Instagram, some video on Instagram, and is getting some kind of hate comments, okay, something negative, which is very, very common on social media, especially if you have a large following or that particular video has gone viral. In that situation, I feel like most of us, what we do is, we want to stand up for our friends, so we are going to type really mean things to this person who's typing the negative comment. And usually these comments and the replies get very, very personal, and there's a lot of abusing going on, and obviously you're going to say it, they're going to say it back, and there's just this whole thread of communication that's going nowhere. And that really doesn't help, because you are just sort of adding fuel to unkindness. And imagine, like, from the victim's point of view, their post suddenly is full of all these words, derogatory words that they don't need to hear. It's not doing anything for them, right? In the moment, they're going to be like, thanks guys, you're standing up for me, but there is a better way to do it. I feel like if you ever see a negative comment against somebody you know, or somebody whose work you appreciate, even sort of just responding by saying something like, perhaps if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Or what else can you say? If somebody's posted something super mean and super personal about the victim, then you could be like, hey, this is not even related, to this post, and this sort of negativity is not appreciated, or there's always a mature way to do this. And I know in the moment it's very hard because you're so angry, right? But just take a second and think about this. Starting a string of profanities is not going to help anybody. Now, also at the same time, what you can do is uplift the target by letting them know that you're there for them. So this could be through a DM. I've had people support me that way, by writing to me saying that, hey, don't worry about what that person says, what you're doing is great, keep going, and that helps. Or also, you could even do that on that negative comment itself. Whatever is being said, you could just sort of tag your friend and be like, hey, you know what, like, people will always have something negative to say, but know that we are all here for you, we appreciate you. Something like that is likely to make a bigger impact than negative comments being reciprocated to with negative comments. And the last thing that I want to talk about is strengthening your connections. So what I mean by this is, if you see somebody being bullied, offer them help beyond just that situation. So if you're seeing someone being bullied at your workplace, ask them to join you for lunch every now and then, or include them in a team for a project that you're working on or something. And if you can be that positive influence in somebody's life, then please go all out and do that. Honestly, nothing will feel better than standing up for someone and putting a smile on their face. And if you have never faced oppression by a bully, then I know it could be hard to understand, but it really is a very, very detrimental experience for anyone who's going through it, especially if they've experienced it over an extended period of time. Now, if you are watching this and you are in a position of authority, say you're a teacher, you're a parent, you're a boss. When it comes to making the work environment or the school environment or just an environment at home conducive and fair to everyone in it, there needs to be more work done than just anti-bullying laws, because they don't always work. There needs to be some sort of a way where people should be able to come up to you and know that you are a safe place for them. For a lot of people, there's too much at stake, and that's why sometimes for them the pros of speaking up just don't measure heavily enough against the cons of speaking up. So I think all of us have a part to play in this, and I really hope that through this video it opens up some sort of perspective for you, and you understand, you get an eye into this world of bullying and just how frequently it happens around us, how commonly it happens around us. Please, take a look in your family, in your friend circle, in your work environment. If you see anything like this going on, anything that you feel like isn't right, please don't ever feel like any situation is too little for you to speak up against. Don't ever feel like, hey, am I overreacting? Because as humans, I think it's generally quite easy for us to differentiate between what is okay and what isn't. And when you know in your gut, in your heart, that something that's going on isn't right, please stand up. And if you are someone who has been a victim of bullying, please either seek help from someone who can sort of teach you how to be more assertive, or read up about assertiveness training. And I really hope that it goes a long way. So this brings me to the end of this video. Honestly, I really hope that it helped you in some way, that I was able to add some value into your life. If you like this video, please help me give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell notifications button so you never miss a video from me again. I urge you to share this video with your friends and family and whoever else you think this may benefit. And that's all for today, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!